I'm Donna, 26 female. I live in a surprisingly spacious two-bedroom apartment in a city where space is the ultimate luxury. For the past 2 years, I've worked as a graphic designer for a mid-sized marketing firm, a job I genuinely enjoy. My life was a comfortable, predictable rhythm of deadlines, creative briefs, and quiet evenings spent sketching on my tablet. All of that stability was shattered by the one person I shared that quiet space with, who decided her future was more important than my home. This is the story of how my roommate, Brenda, forged my signature to break our lease, thinking she could leave me homeless without consequence. She underestimated me, and she certainly didn't count on me discovering that the notary who stamped her illegal document was the landlord's ambitious nephew, a law student who was about to get a very hands-on lesson in professional ethics, courtesy of me. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. Living with a roommate in your mid-20s is always a gamble. You're betting that another human being's habits, quirks, and general approach to life will be compatible enough with your own that you don't end up in a constant state of low-grade hostility. With Brenda, I thought I had won the lottery. We met through a mutual friend who vouched for her, and for the first year and a half, it was perfect. Our apartment was a model of harmonious cohabitation. We split the bills down the middle using a shared app, took turns buying communal supplies like paper towels and dish soap, and respected each other's space. Brenda worked as an influencer marketing coordinator, a job that seemed to involve a lot of scrolling on her phone, attending trendy pop-up events, and receiving an endless stream of free products that cluttered our entryway. She was bubbly, outgoing, and perpetually online, while I was more of an introvert who cherished my quiet time. Our opposing personalities actually worked well. She would be out most weeknights at some launch party or networking event, leaving me with the apartment to myself. On weekends, I'd often visit my parents or go hiking, giving her the space to film her day in the life, content, or have friends over. We were like two ships passing in the night, co-captaining a vessel called Apartment 4B. The lease was in both our names. Mr. Peterson, our landlord, was a stern but fair man who managed the building with an old-school efficiency. He liked things done by the book, and when we renewed our lease 6 months ago, he had us both come down to his small, tidy office on the ground floor to sign the new 2-year agreement in person. I remember the day clearly. I had to take a long lunch from work. Brenda was late, as usual, breezing in with an apology about a crisis with a client's Instagram grid. We both sat there, initialing each page and providing our full signatures on the final one. It felt solid, secure, 2 more years of stability. The first crack in our perfect arrangement appeared subtly. About 3 months ago, Brenda started talking about her boyfriend, a guy named Rick who was a crypto entrepreneur, a title that immediately set off my internal alarm bells. He was always around, lounging on our sofa like he paid half the rent and eating my food from the fridge. I tried to be polite, but his presence was disruptive. He was loud, messy, and had an opinion on everything, from my taste in movies to the way I organized the kitchen cabinets. I brought it up with Brenda gently, mentioning that our utility bills had jumped and that it was feeling a bit crowded. She was immediately defensive. "He's going through a tough time, Donna. His latest venture just re-strategized. He'll be back on his feet soon." She promised he would be more considerate, but nothing changed. Then the phone calls started. Brenda began taking hushed, frantic calls in her room or out on the fire escape. I'd catch snippets of conversations about deposits, moving trucks, and needing to get out. When I asked if everything was okay, she'd plaster on her bright, influencer smile and brush it off. "Oh, just helping a friend with her move. It's so stressful, you know?" I wanted to believe her. I've always been someone who avoids conflict, and I trusted that if there was a real issue, she would tell me. After all, we were a team. We had a system. We had a lease. Looking back, the signs were all there, blinking like neon warnings I chose to ignore. The way she stopped contributing to our shared grocery list. the way she'd go silent whenever I entered a room while she was on the phone with Rick. The biggest clue was when I came home one afternoon to find her stuffing one of her free promotional tote bags with her expensive skincare products. "Weekend trip with Rick?" she chirped when she saw M. He's surprising me. The trip seemed to last for a week. Her side of the bathroom counter was empty, and her closet was noticeably thinner. Still, I told myself I was being paranoid. People go on trips. People have messy boyfriends. People help their friends move. I clung to the idea of our harmony, not wanting to accept that my half of the apartment was about to be left completely alone and in a whole lot of trouble. The foundation of trust I thought we'd built was already gone. I just hadn't felt the floor give way yet. The day my world tilted on its axis started like any other Tuesday. I woke up, went for a quick run, showered, and settled in at my desk in the corner of my bedroom to start my workday. I was a remote employee, so my apartment wasn't just my home, it was my office, my sanctuary. Brenda hadn't been back from her weekend trip, but a text from her a few days prior had said she was extending it and would be back by the end of the week. I was secretly enjoying the solitude, the quiet hum of the refrigerator replacing the constant chatter of her video calls. Around 11 a.m., I took a break to make some tea. As I walked through the living room, I noticed an envelope had been slipped under our front door. It wasn't from the Postal Service. It was a plain white business envelope, folded in half. My name and Brenda's were handwritten on it in thick black marker. I assumed it was a noise complaint or a notice about building maintenance, something from Mr. Peterson. I picked it up, tore it open, and unfolded the single sheet of paper inside. The words at the top were in a bold, severe font, "Official notice to vacate." My heart seized. I read the first sentence, then read it again, certain I was misunderstanding. "Pursuant to the termination of your lease agreement, you are hereby required to vacate the premises at our address, apartment 4B, within 30 days of the date of this notice." The notice was dated the previous day. 30 days. I had 30 days to leave my home. Panic, cold and sharp, flooded my veins. This had to be a mistake, a clerical error. We had just signed a 2-year lease. I fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking so badly I could barely unlock it. I immediately called Mr. Peterson's office number. His assistant answered, and I could hear the impatience in her voice when I explained who I was. "Yes, Donna, Mr. Peterson asked me to slide that under your door this morning," she said coolly. "He assumed you were aware." "Aware of what?" I stammered, my voice rising. "We have a lease until next year. This is a mistake." There was a sigh on the other end of the line. "There's no mistake. The lease was terminated. We received the signed and notarized lease termination agreement from Brenda last month. She dropped it off herself. You've been living on a month-to-month basis since then, and we have now terminated that tenancy. The new tenants are scheduled to move in on the 1st of next month." The words hit me like a physical blow. Brenda terminated the lease last month. My mind was a vortex of confusion and disbelief. But I never signed anything," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Both of our signatures are required. It's in the lease agreement. I never signed a termination form." "Well, we have a form with your signature on it," the assistant said, her tone suggesting this conversation was over. "It was properly notarized and everything. If you have an issue with it, that's between you and your roommate. From our perspective, the tenancy is ending. You have until the 10th of next month." And then she hung up. I stood in the middle of my living room, the eviction notice trembling in my hand. The quiet apartment suddenly felt vast and hostile. Every object, the sofa we'd picked out together, the coffee table that held our shared magazines, the art prints on the wall, felt like a prop in a life that was no longer mine. I sank onto the couch, my mind racing. I tried calling Brenda. Her phone went straight to voicemail. I sent her a series of frantic texts. "Brenda, what did you do? Call me now." "They're kicking me out." The messages remained undelivered. I checked her social media. Her profiles, once a constant stream of updates, were suddenly set to private. She had blocked me. The betrayal was so profound, so complete, it was almost surreal. This wasn't just an irresponsible roommate skipping out on rent. This was a calculated act of deception. She had planned this for weeks, maybe even months, all while smiling to my face, borrowing my milk, and complaining about her workday. She had intentionally and maliciously made me homeless. The panic began to curdle into a hot, sickening rage. How could she do this? And more importantly, how had she done it? How did she get my signature on a legal document I had never seen? I looked at the red-taped notice again, the official letterhead of Mr. Peterson's property management company mocking me. My home was being ripped out from under me, and I had no idea how to stop it. The 30-day countdown had begun. For the rest of the day, I was paralyzed. I sat on the sofa, cycling through waves of fury, fear, and utter helplessness. The eviction notice felt like a ticking bomb on the coffee table. How was I supposed to find a new apartment in one of the most expensive cities in the country in less than 30 days? My savings were decent, but not enough to cover the exorbitant deposits and first month's rent on such short notice. My job was stable, but my salary was based on the affordable rent I was currently paying. Losing this apartment wouldn't just be an inconvenience, it would be a financial catastrophe. By evening, the paralysis began to recede, replaced by a cold, hard determination. I wasn't going to let Brenda destroy my life without a fight. If Mr. Peterson's office had a form with my signature on it, I needed to see it. I had a right to see the evidence being used to evict me. I spent a sleepless night drafting an email to Mr. Peterson. I kept it professional and firm, avoiding emotional language. I stated that I had not signed any such document, that I believed my signature had been forged, and that I was formally requesting a copy of the lease termination agreement in question. I cited the clause in our original lease that required written notice and mutual consent for any modifications. I hit send at 6 a.m., my heart pounding with a mixture of dread and defiance. To my surprise, I received a response just 2 hours later. It was from Mr. Peterson himself. "Donna," the email read, "my apologies for the abruptness of the notice. My assistant can be overly efficient. I was under the impression you and Brenda had coordinated this. Of course, you can see the document. Please come by my office at 11 a.m. today." A sliver of hope ignited within me. At least he was willing to talk. I spent the next few hours preparing, gathering my own evidence. I found our original lease agreement in my file cabinet, the one with our real, legitimate signatures side by side. I practiced my signature on a piece of scrap paper a few times, studying its loops and slants. My signature was distinctive. I had a very specific way of looping the D in Donna and a sharp, upward flick on the final A. It was a muscle memory I'd had for years. At 11 a.m., I walked into Mr. Peterson's small, immaculately organized office. He was an imposing man, tall and broad-shouldered with a crown of thick gray hair, but his eyes were clear and direct. He gestured for me to sit. "I don't like messy situations, Donna," he said, getting straight to the point. He opened a file on his desk and pulled out a single-page document. "This is what Brenda brought in about 5 weeks ago." He slid it across the desk. It was the lease termination agreement. My eyes scanned the boilerplate text until they landed at the bottom on the signature lines. There was Brenda's familiar, loopy scrawl, and next to it was my name. It was a decent attempt, I had to give her that. It had the same general shape and flow, but it was wrong. The D was too round, too soft. The final lacked the characteristic flick. It was like looking at a distorted reflection in a funhouse mirror. It was close, but it was undeniably, fundamentally fraudulent. "This is not my signature," I said, my voice steady. I pushed my copy of our original lease across the desk and pointed to my real signature. "This is my signature. The one on that termination form is a forgery." Mr. Peterson leaned forward, peering at the two documents through his reading glasses. He picked them up, holding them side by side, his brow furrowed in concentration. He was silent for a full minute, just looking back and forth between the two signatures. I could see the moment the doubt set in. His expression shifted from stern certainty to troubled concern. "I see the difference," he said slowly, placing the papers back on the desk. "They are very similar, but they're not identical." He looked at me, his gaze serious. The problem, Donna, is that this document was notarized. He tapped a finger on the embossed seal and signature at the bottom of the page. A notary public officially witnessed and verified the signatures. As far as the law is concerned, this is a valid document. A notary's seal carries a lot of weight. My heart sank. Of course, the notary seal, that's how she made it look so official. She had found a way to get a legal stamp of approval on her lie. Who was the notary? I asked, a new thread of inquiry spinning in my mind. Mr. Peterson adjusted his glasses and leaned in to read the name signed next to the seal. It says, Marcus Henderson. He paused, a look of weary recognition on his face. That's my sister's boy, my nephew. The revelation that the notary was Mr. Peterson's own nephew, Marcus, hung in the air of the small office. It changed everything. This was no longer just a see of my roommate forging my name. This was a potential conflict of interest, a messy family connection that complicated the entire situation. Mr. Peterson leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples as if a headache was blooming behind his eyes. Marcus is a good kid, he said, more to himself than to me. He's in law school, just got his notary commission a few months ago. He does it to make a little extra money. He looked at me, his expression a mixture of paternal concern and landlordly frustration. Are you absolutely certain you didn't sign this, Donna? Maybe you signed it and forgot? Brenda can be very persuasive. I felt a flash of indignation but quickly suppressed it. He was trying to make sense of a situation that implicated his own family. Mr. Peterson, I said, my tone firm but respectful, I am 100% certain. I would remember signing away my home. I have bank statements, work emails, and location data from my phone that can prove I was nowhere near a notary's office on the date listed on that document. I was at home, working all day. My preparedness seemed to impress him. The fight went out of his posture, replaced by a resigned sigh. Okay, he said. Okay, I believe you. But as I said, from a legal standpoint, my hands are tied by this notarized form. The eviction notice stands unless you can legally prove this is a forgery and that the notarization was fraudulent. He paused. Which would mean proving my nephew was either negligent or complicit. I hope you understand the difficult position this puts me in. I did understand, but I also understood that I was about to be homeless. What do you know about Marcus? I asked, shifting into investigation mode. Where does he go to school? Mr. Peterson hesitated, then seemed to decide that transparency was the best path forward. He's in his final year at Northwood University's law program. He's smart, ambitious, top of his class, or so his mother tells me. He added, with a touch of weariness, he's been looking for a summer internship. Needs it to graduate, something in contract law, ideally. A plan began to form in my mind, faint and uncertain at first, but slowly coming into focus. A law student. An ambitious law student who needed an internship. An ambitious law student who had just notarized a fraudulent document, a serious offense that could get him disbarred before he even took the exam. The pieces were starting to connect. Thank you, Mr. Peterson, I said, standing up. You've been very helpful. Can I please get a high-quality copy of that termination form? He nodded and walked over to his copier, making a clean scan and handing me the paper. Donna, he said as I turned to leave, for what it's worth, I'm sorry you're in this mess. Brenda always seemed like such a nice girl. She's a very good actress, I replied, and walked out of his office, the forged document in my hand feeling less like a death sentence and more like a weapon. My first stop was the library. I spent the afternoon researching notary law in our state. The rules were strict and clear. A notary's primary duty is to verify the identity of the person signing the document. This usually requires checking a government-issued photo ID. The notary must also record every transaction in a physical journal, including the date, the type of document, the name of the signer, and how their identity was verified. The idea that Marcus could have notarized my signature without me being present was a clear violation of his duties. There were only two possibilities. Either Brenda had brought in someone with a fake ID bearing my name, or Marcus had simply stamped the document without me there at all, likely as a favor to Brenda. Given her charm and his inexperience, the second option seemed far more plausible. Next, I turned my attention to Marcus Henderson. A quick search on the Northwood University Law School website brought up his student profile. There he was, a smiling, clean-cut young man in a suit and tie. The profile listed his academic achievements and his role in the Student Bar Association. It also mentioned his specific interest in contract and property law. At the bottom, it listed his professional networking profile. I clicked the link. His profile was a testament to his ambition. It detailed his coursework, his moot court experience, and a post from just last week. Excited to be entering my final year and actively seeking a summer internship with a reputable firm specializing in contract law. Eager to apply my academic knowledge to real-world legal challenges. The irony was staggering. He was publicly advertising his passion for the very area of law he had just violated. He was so eager for a real-world legal challenge, and I was about to give him one he would never forget. I now had his name, his school, his professional aspirations, and the evidence of his misconduct. All I needed was to figure out how to use this leverage to unravel Brenda's scheme and save my home. The fear that had gripped me for the past 48 hours was now completely gone, replaced by a laser-like focus. The investigation was over. It was time to formulate the plan. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with all the pieces laid out before me like a general planning a campaign. I had the copy of the forged lease termination agreement, a printout of Marcus's networking profile, and a summary of the state's notary laws with the relevant sections highlighted. The path forward was clear, but it required precision and a steady nerve. A direct confrontation with Marcus felt risky. He could deny everything, and it would become my word against his. I needed to create a situation where admitting his wrongdoing was his only logical choice. My plan had two phases. Phase 1 was confirming the final piece of the puzzle, the notary journal. By law, Marcus was required to have a record of the transaction. If he didn't, it was another black mark against him. If he did, I wanted to see what he wrote. Did he falsify an entry stating I was there, or did he leave it blank? I drafted another email, this time to Marcus directly. I found his student email address on the university website. The subject line was simple: inquiry regarding notary service, our address. The email itself was polite and professional. I introduced myself as one of the tenants at the address and explained that I was reviewing the lease termination paperwork provided by my landlord, Mr. Peterson. I see your name and seal on the document from last month, I wrote. For my records, could you please provide me with a copy of the corresponding entry from your notary journal? I just need to confirm the details of the signing for my legal counsel. The phrase legal counsel was a calculated bluff designed to signal that I was taking this seriously. I knew a law student, especially one on the verge of his career, would recognize the implication. I hit send and waited. The response came less than an hour later. It was short and panicked. I'm in class all day. Can we discuss this later? Maybe over the phone. I think there may be a misunderstanding. His immediate pivot to a phone call instead of simply providing the record was a confession in itself. He didn't want a written trail. He was scared. This confirmed it. He knew he had messed up. Now for phase 2, the trap, I replied to his email. A phone call is fine, I wrote. However, I'm on a tight deadline with my eviction. I've also been speaking with my landlord, your uncle, about this matter. He mentioned you were looking for a summer internship in contract law. Coincidentally, the law firm I am consulting with is looking for an intern. They are a highly respected firm in the city, Blackwood and Hayes. Perhaps we could all meet to clear this up. You, me, and Mr. Peterson. We could resolve the document issue, and I could introduce you to the senior partner I've been speaking with. How about tomorrow at 2 p.m. in Mr. Peterson's office? It was a masterpiece of bait and switch. I had no connection to Blackwood and Hayes, a prestigious law firm I had picked from a top 10 law firms in the city list. But Marcus didn't know that. I was offering him the one thing he desperately wanted, a dream internship, wrapped up in the resolution of the one problem that could destroy his future. The offer was too good to refuse, and the implicit threat was too great to ignore. For him to get the internship, he had to show up and cooperate. The meeting itself, with his uncle present, would be the stage for his confession. I immediately called Mr. Peterson. "I've been in contact with your nephew," I said calmly. "He seems to recall the situation. I've invited him to a meeting in your office tomorrow at 2 p.m. to resolve this. I believe we can clear everything up then." There was a pause on the line. "What exactly did you say to him, Donna?" Mr. Peterson asked, a note of suspicion in his voice. "I simply told him we needed to discuss the notarization and that you would be there," I said, omitting the part about the fake internship. "I think it's best we all talk face to face." He agreed, likely relieved that something was finally happening. My final piece of preparation was a call to Brenda. I had been blocked on my cell, so I used the phone in my office's conference room, a number she wouldn't recognize. She picked up on the third ring. "Hello," she said, her voice cautious. "Brenda," I said, keeping my voice flat and devoid of emotion. "It's Donna. Mr. Peterson, our landlord, has called a mandatory meeting tomorrow at 2 p.m. in his office to discuss the lease. He said if you are not there, he will be proceeding with legal action against you for providing fraudulent documents and will be involving the police. Be there." Before she could respond, I hung up. It was another bluff, but a necessary one. I needed all the players on the stage for the final act. I spent the rest of the evening feeling a strange sense of calm. The chessboard was set. The pieces were moving at my command. Brenda thought she had checkmated me, but she had no idea I had just flipped the board and was about to use her own king against her. The air in Mr. Peterson's office was thick with a tense, suffocating silence. It was 2 p.m. on the dot. I had arrived first, taking the seat directly opposite the door. Mr. Peterson sat behind his large oak desk, his face an unreadable mask of professional neutrality. He had simply nodded at me when I entered, his eyes conveying a sense of, "Let's see how this plays out." At 2 minutes past the hour, the door opened and Marcus Henderson walked in. He looked even younger and more anxious in person than in his university profile picture. He was wearing a suit that was slightly too big for him, as if he was playing dress-up for the career he was so desperate to have. His eyes darted from his uncle to me, a sheen of sweat visible on his forehead. "Uncle Robert," he mumbled, then nodded at me. "Donna." "Marcus," Mr. Peterson said, his voice low and serious. "Have a seat." Marcus took the chair next to me, perching on the edge of it as if ready to bolt at any moment. Before anyone else could speak, I took control of the conversation. "Thank you both for coming," I began, my voice calm and measured. "I wanted to resolve the issue with the lease termination agreement. Marcus, I believe there was a serious error made in the notarization of that document." Marcus swallowed hard. "Like I said in my email, it might be a misunderstanding." "There is no misunderstanding." I cut him off, my tone hardening slightly. "I was not present when that document was signed. My signature was forged. Therefore, you either failed to verify my identity, or you notarized a document knowing the signatory was not present. Both are serious violations of the Notary Public Code of Conduct. Violations that carry penalties including the revocation of your commission, fines, and potential civil liability. For a law student, it could also trigger a character and fitness review by the state bar, which could prevent you from ever practicing law. I let the words hang in the air. Marcus's face had gone pale. He looked helplessly at his uncle, who was now staring at him with a look of profound disappointment. "Is this true, Marcus?" Mr. Peterson asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "Did you notarize this without the person present?" Marcus's composure crumbled. "She said it was fine," he blurted out, his voice cracking. "The other girl, Brenda, she came in, she was in a huge hurry. She said you were her roommate and that you had already signed it but were stuck at work and had given her permission. She was really charming and convincing. She said her uncle owned the building, so it was all, informal, I didn't think." "You didn't think," I interjected. "Or you didn't check. Did you ask for her ID? Did you see my ID?" No, he whispered, his eyes fixed on the floor. I just stamped it. I know it was wrong. I've been panicking ever since you emailed me. It was a stupid, stupid mistake. Just then, the office door creaked open again. Brenda stood in the doorway, a look of defiant annoyance on her face. She was dressed in a trendy blazer and jeans, a stark contrast to Marcus's ill-fitting suit. Her eyes scanned the room, landing on me, then Marcus, then Mr. Peterson. Her confident expression faltered when she saw Marcus's pathetic, defeated state. "What is this all about?" she demanded, trying to project authority. "I have a client call in 10 minutes. "This is about this," Mr. Peterson said, sliding the forged document to the center of his desk. "This document, which you brought to me, is fraudulent. Donna's signature was forged, and my nephew has just admitted to notarizing it improperly, at your request." Brenda's face went from confusion to fury. She shot a venomous glare at Marcus. "You idiot, you told them." "There was nothing to tell," I said, standing up to face her directly. The lie was obvious from the start. Brenda turned her anger on me. "You have no proof. It's his word against mine." "Oh, I have more than that," I said calmly. "I have our original lease with my real signature. I have state law on my side. And now," I gestured to the trembling law student beside me, "I have a sworn officer of the court who has just confessed to his role in your scheme in front of a witness." I looked pointedly at Mr. Peterson. Brenda was trapped. Her entire plan had been predicated on a flimsy piece of paper, and that foundation had just been demolished. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, her mind clearly racing for another angle, another lie. Mr. Peterson stood up, his presence filling the room. His voice was cold as ice. "Brenda, your actions constitute fraud. You have attempted to illegally terminate a lease and evict your roommate. You have induced a notary to commit a violation. Here is what is going to happen. The termination is void. The original lease is in full effect. You are still on the hook for your half of the rent for the next year and a half. Furthermore, you will vacate the apartment within 48 hours. I don't want you under my roof. Your security deposit is forfeited to cover the costs of changing the locks and addressing this mess. If you are not out by Friday, I will not only file a civil suit against you for the full remainder of the lease amount, but I will also hand this entire file over to the district attorney's office." Brenda stared at him, her jaw slack. The bubbly, confident influencer was gone, replaced by a cornered criminal. For the first time since I'd known her, she was speechless. She looked at me one last time, her eyes filled with pure hatred, before turning on her heel and storming out of the office. The showdown was over. After Brenda stormed out, a heavy silence settled over Mr. Peterson's office once more. It was broken only by the quiet, shaky breathing of Marcus, who still sat hunched in his chair, the picture of misery. Mr. Peterson slowly sat back down behind his desk and fixed his gaze on his nephew. "Get out," he said, his voice flat and devoid of any warmth. Marcus looked up, his eyes wide with a desperate hope. "Uncle Robert, the internship?" Donna said. I held up a hand. "There is no internship, Marcus," I said, my voice not unkind. "There is no Blackwood and Hayes. That was the bait. I needed you in this room, and I needed you to tell the truth. Consider this your first real-world lesson in legal ethics. Your actions have consequences that no amount of ambition can erase." The last bit of color drained from his face. The realization that he had been so thoroughly outmaneuvered, and that the prize he'd been chasing was an illusion, seemed to hit him harder than the legal threats. He stood up on wobbly legs, gave his uncle one last, pleading look that was met with a stony glare, and walked out of the office, his dreams of a prestigious summer internship in tatters. Mr. Peterson watched him go, then turned his attention to me. He looked tired, older than he had an hour ago. "I apologize, Donna," he said sincerely, "for my nephew's role in this and for not looking closer at that document in the first place." "You believed the notary seal," I said. "That's what it's there for. Brenda counted on that." "Well," he sighed, "Brenda will have her own problems to deal with. I have no doubt she will fail to pay her half of the rent. When that happens, the eviction will be filed against her, and the judgment will follow her for years. As for you, the lease stands, you can stay. And frankly, finding a new roommate will be difficult under these circumstances. So, for the remainder of the original lease term, I'm reducing your rent by a third. Consider it a hardship discount. I was stunned. Mr. Peterson, you don't have to do that. I know, he said, a faint, sad smile touching his lips. But I want to. Good tenants are hard to find. You've proven to be a very good tenant. I left his office feeling a profound sense of relief, so overwhelming it almost felt like exhaustion. That evening, I heard Brenda return to the apartment. There was no confrontation. I stayed in my room, my door locked, and listened to the sounds of her angry packing, drawers slamming, objects being thrown into boxes. The next afternoon, I heard her drag her suitcases out the door for the last time. When I finally emerged, the apartment was still and silent. Her room was completely empty, save for a few dust bunnies and a single, forgotten promotional tote bag on the floor. The next day, Mr. Peterson had the locks changed. Holding the new set of keys that were mine alone, felt like a true victory. The apartment was finally, completely my own space. The quiet that I had once found so peaceful felt even more profound now, filled not with absence, but with security. As for the others, I heard through the grapevine that Brenda moved in with Rick, the crypto boyfriend. Their relationship apparently imploded a few months later when his latest venture failed, and he drained what was left of her savings. Last I heard, she had moved back in with her parents, her influencer career a distant memory. The court did grant Mr. Peterson a judgment against her for the unpaid rent, a black mark on her credit that would haunt her for the next decade. And Marcus, I don't know for sure what happened with his legal career. I imagine his uncle's disappointment was a punishment in itself. He learned a harsh lesson, that a signature on a piece of paper isn't just ink, it's a promise. A notary's seal isn't just a stamp, it's a guarantee of integrity. He traded his integrity for a moment of convenience to impress a pretty girl, and it cost him dearly. I hope he learned from it. I hope he became a better lawyer and a better man because of it. Though, Army, life returned to a new normal, a better normal. I reveled in the solitude of my apartment, decorating Brenda's old room as a dedicated studio for my freelance design work. I learned a valuable lesson about trusting my instincts and the importance of fighting for myself. Brenda thought she could erase me with a forged signature, but she only revealed a strength in me I never knew I had. I had faced down eviction, fraud, and gaslighting, and had come out the other side stronger, safer, and with slightly cheaper rent. And that, I realized, is the best kind of revenge.